welcome back to another weekend. Let's go. Have some fun. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another stick shift. Hope everybody's been doing well. Hope you've all had a good week. Our day begins at the international terminal over here at Tom Bradley, and I was watching this beautiful 777 roll in. But this is not my first office. The airplane that I'm waiting for is an Airbus. On the way there, this aircraft was pulling in, and the rules on airport grounds is aircraft always has the right of way. So everybody stops on the service roads. We allow the aircraft to pass by, and there's wing walkers to make sure that nobody crosses the path of the aircraft or goes behind the aircraft. But I took the opportunity to get this cool little shot here, and it gives you kind of a nice perspective how big these aircraft are, especially this 777. It's just huge. You know, I gotta admit, the shape of the wingtip on the A350 is just beautiful. Man, oh man, what a pretty airplane. Too bad. I'll never get to work on it. We don't have any in our fleet. Anyway, we gotta go to gate 151. Our airplane's gonna show up here pretty soon. Let's go. Here comes the first office. As always, this one's a tow-in gate, so they gotta shut down engines over there and tow it in. I get this question asked a lot, and I've talked about it before. Just to reiterate, the engine is perfectly balanced. Even though the engine is not running, it could still turn with a slight gust of wind. And the noise that you're hearing from the fan blades, that's because of the mid-span shrouds. I made a video on that one before. Here's what the blades look like outside of the engine, and you can clearly see the mid-span shrouds. I forgot to mention the model of the engine. This is the CFM 56-5B, which is equipped on the Airbus. And what you're looking down right there, down that pipe, which is a center vent tube, and that thing that you see that's spinning in there, that is the number 5 bearing. This is part of the low pressure turbine shaft. That bearing is the only bearing that is visible to the naked eye on this engine, as well as the 7B. All right, good old CFM 56 5B. I can't remember who was asking. Somebody was asking, where is the starter valve? Well, we have to do a ground air start on this engine. I've shown it to you on V2500 engine, but here's what it looks like on the CFM 56-5B. Right there. Just turn that, manually open the starter valve so air can go down to the starter and you can start the engine. But yeah, there it is. Does anybody remember this video right here? I'm sure it's floating around the internet. There's so many people that have just taken my video and just repurposed it for their own selves, but it's fine. That's not the point. The point is, this is the same concept right here. Me turning a starter valve open to manually start the engine. Yes, this is a CFM LEAP 1A engine equipped also on an Airbus. This is the next generation of their engines, but the concept is still the same. If the starter valve is malfunctioning or not operating correctly, we can start the engine on the ground. There's somebody on the headset up front. Pilots are on board. And once they give the go-ahead, the signal, I turn the starter valve, allowing air that's coming from the APU to enter via ducting into the starter. Once the starter gets the proper amount of air, the engine begins to turn. Once the engine has reached a sufficient amount of speed with a combination of proper compression ratios as well as fuel and spark, the engine lights off. At that point, I am given a signal that the engine is good. I can turn the starter valve to close. This prevents the starter from keep on turning. Basically, the starter is no longer needed. Engine is now self-sufficient. One thing on the video, the original video that I posted, I forgot to mention, which I will mention right here. People started asking questions, and very important questions. The most important one is, what happens if the engine, let's say, fails in mid-flight? How do you start the engine now? Well, the point is that when you are flying, you already have wind that is pushing through the engine. The engine is still going to keep spinning. Pilots have a very specific procedure where they can relight the engine while in flight. So again, I am simply adding air or allowing air via ducting to go to the starter. But when the aircraft is in flight, the engine is already spinning. Pilots will follow a certain procedure and they can relight that engine mid-flight just in case, let's say, they had an in-flight shutdown. So I don't want you to worry. I'm like, oh my God, you can only start it on ground. You can't start it back in the air. Yes, you can start it back in the air. And don't worry where I'm standing. That is not an ingestion zone. So I know exactly where I am. There's a very proper place to stand when the engine is running. It's part of maintenance responsibilities to know this. We can approach the engine from the side because when we are performing such tasks like this, we can simply just walk away from the engine. Not the forward, not exhaust. We do this when we do leak checks, perform this kind of technique right here. But anyway, give you a quick little glance into the past. Here we go. Let's see now. Hit the status page, make sure everything's okay. That's what I want to see, all normal. Although, that should not be there. I know what it is. There it is. Okay, here we go. This is going to be a fun one. So Airbus 320 family have certain configurations for flaps. They identify themselves within 5 parameters or 5 flap settings: 0, 1, 2, 3, and full. This also includes the slats. Now, I am not a pilot. I'm just telling you what I understand from the system. So pilots, chime in. You guys have more knowledge and more information. So feel free, educate me, educate everybody else down here. But this is my description or understanding of the flap 3 settings. You mostly use for turbulent conditions, such as wind shear, or for fuel saving, depending on the policy. The reason I mentioned fuel savings is because the more flap you have, let's say you go full flaps down, the higher the engines have to rev up to maintain lift. Remember, when you're extending your flaps, you're making your wing bigger. You're changing the shape of the wing. Depending on takeoff or landing, pilots can choose depending on the weather, the conditions, on what flap settings they have to be in. And it's also used for go-around and climb performance. The system is also tied into GPWS, ground proximity warning. Oh, and by the way, the settings of 0, 1, 2, 3, full have nothing to do with the degrees of the flaps. That's just the way Airbus does it. When you go into a Boeing aircraft, the detents actually show you the degrees of flap extension. But anyway, my whole point behind this is that sometimes when pilots, they finish, they come in, they land, they wrap up. Sometimes they forget that little button and leave it on, which is no harm to the aircraft at all. It's just a different configuration, and I'm not used to seeing it. So when I see it, and there's a little notification on the eCam right there. So what I do is I look up, I know what it is. So I usually just turn it off. But anyway, that was it. Hopefully I explained that fairly okay. But pilots, once again, chime in on this one. Give a more description because you guys know more information on this than I do. Pilot must have forgotten to turn it off. There it goes. Easy. Alright, let's keep on going. Next office. Okay, next office is a 737-800 series or an NG, and I want you to pay attention to those little tabs right below the windshield. As most of you would guess, those are vortex generators, but those vortex generators serve a very specific reason. It's for noise reduction. Reduces the noise from the flight deck from the windshield because it's at such a high angle. Just removes turbulent air for a nice, quiet flight deck. There we go. Do a quick little walk around. I already oiled the engine, so Let's make sure everything's okay. It's getting windy out here. Round and round she goes. More aerodynamic properties that have to be modified to the aircraft. These things are called stall strips. They're installed on the leading edge of the aircraft wings. They're simply there to modify the aerodynamic characteristics of the wing. They initiate flow separation, in particular to the regions of the upper surface of the wing during a flight at high angles of attack. To simplify it basically helps or improves the controllability of an airplane as it approaches a stall angle. One thing I have to tell you, or I should probably apologize for this, I repeat myself a lot in a lot of my videos. You're going to get a lot of redundant information that I talk over and over again about the same stuff. But the thing is, it's a refresher in my own mind and it's a refresher for you. It's a lot of information. So if you catch me talking about the same stuff over and over again on a multitude of my videos, I'm sorry. And we're back inside of a 737. Actually, this one staying here tonight. It's staying here for overnight maintenance, so I need to give it a little bit of oil. She's a happy airplane. Before we leave, let's take a look at the overhead panel on this 737, and particular attention to the right side on the FO side. This panel. This is the modernized version of the aircraft pressurization system, or the control panel for the pressurization system. Majority of it is done automatically. The aircraft will take care of itself. Pilots would just need to set the flight altitude and landing altitude. Set it on auto and the outflow valve will do its job. Outflow valve being the little opening at the back of the aircraft that modulates constantly open and close in very minute sequences to keep the aircraft properly pressurized. And the pressurization of the aircraft happens via the aircraft air conditioning system that is taking air from the engines, bleed air, and rerouting it through the air conditioning system, and the air conditioning system will push air into the aircraft. But the outflow valve has to be there to constantly modulate the proper amount of pressure. Anyway, my point being here is that that particular panel is a very known thing. Everybody knows the story of the Helios flight, right? Well, that is the little knob or the switch right there that you're seeing. That's the main culprit. That switch was left in manual, and the outflow valve never closed. I'll let you guys read up on that one if you guys don't know the story behind it. Remember, I opened the door for you. You have to walk through it. Go research. The gray little circles that you're seeing right there, those are static ports for the aircraft. Do you see how many of them there are? That's just on this side. There's more on the other side. Those things measure the static pressure of the wind flow across the aircraft. This feeds data of altitude, airspeed, and works in tandem with the pitot system, hence why it's called the pitot-static system. And that's just an image I caught of the jet bridge mating with the aircraft itself. The aircraft had just came in and the jet bridge is moving around, and it's kind of cool to see the articulation of the jet bridge itself. It's actually a very complex mechanism. Gate agents are the people that are responsible for maneuvering that one. I figure I show it. It's pretty cool. A little bit of GE nose right there. Oh, somebody said the footrest isn't up. Let's see now. Oh, that's working. That's working. Everything's working to me. That's what I call operator error. That's all good. Easy sign off. Now, I can't remember who asked, but somebody did ask. They wanted to see if it's possible to dim all the lights within... Not the lights, the window shades. I meant to say the window shades. My brain sometimes has a lapse. What I meant to say is the window shades on the 787. The cabin. So yes, you can. It's from this panel. Somebody thought it was from the flight deck. It's not. It's actually from here. See? A window control area, and you can go all the way to 5, activate, and the windows will all dim. I forgot to select all of them, so you have to select all. So anyway, you activate, it's all going to dim. You can also lock and unlock it, so the passenger won't be able to dim the windows or bring them back up. But yeah, there you go. Now they're all going dim. Cool. Overall, this one is good to go. This one actually is going to get repositioned and moved because an ETOPS needs to be done, but this is a very late departure. This one's going now to Haneda at around almost 1 o'clock in the morning, so it's got to get off the gate. But anyway, yeah, but I did what I could do over here. That's it. On to the next one. All right, that was a nice, easy day. Don't worry, we got more to come tomorrow. I'll see you guys bright and early in the morning. Later. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to another beautiful day. Come on. Let's go wake our beautiful birds up. Here we go. Oh, this is one of our Transcon birds. Put that right there. Yeah, this is one of our Transcon airplanes. Most of the time they're just using these for LA, Chicago, LA, Boston, LA, JFK. I think that's the flight. Yeah, those are most of the flights they use this configuration of airplane. But it's pretty nice. Very comfy. Heck, it's even comfy when you're in economy right here. One thing I do when I do my wake-up checks for the aircraft, I check the slide bottle pressures. I don't know why I do this. I'm not even required, but it just became habit. I just always check them. I do this amongst other things just to make sure I'm okay with the aircraft. A quick little look around. There you go. Is the bottle for the exit slide right here. Check the gauge pressure. Now, there are a variety of 321 aircraft, Airbus 321 aircraft, that have exit doors that are over wing exit doors. It's a very particular configuration when it comes to this. There's some Airbus aircraft that are equipped with exit doors that are over the wing, and some exit doors that are not over wing. They're either in front or behind the wing. Now, the slides and the slide bottles, they're configured a little bit different than the conventional, let's say the entry doors, the L1, R1, or the other ones, such as the ones behind, the R4, L4, the ones behind. These particular doors are kind of centered in the middle of the aircraft. So the conventional bustle, which you saw earlier when I was checking the slides, are not there. So they had to reconfigure the aircraft slightly. That means the slide bottle is no longer equipped right next to the slide. It's in the overhead, and the slide itself is actually on the outside. Recent news, Delta had a little mishap with their 767 with that one right there. All was good. Oh, here's something interesting. So notice the seat coloring of the headrests. Notice you got full band of red, full band of red, full red, and then you got the partial, right? So I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think this is what it designates. This is for the, what do they call it? I think main cabin extra. So you can basically get extra leg room. But when you get to these, less leg room. So the further back you go, obviously, turning into a sardine can like every other airplane. But yeah, no extra leg room, extra leg room. Pretty cool, huh? Here we go. Let's see now. Make sure to go through the parameters. Don't worry about all those messages. All that's going to go away as soon as the battery's going. And then we're going to align the arrows. Get that. And all of that will go away. Let's see now. But otherwise, just check engine oil. Good. Hydraulics. Good. Door page. Good. Oxygen is good. Just the basics. Here's something interesting about the Airbus side stick. So inside here, obviously you have a whole computer module. It's all down here. This thing, to remove it, there's a whole big unit down here, but there's also little dampeners. Quick little side note, I need to remind you, the Airbus family, especially the 320 family, is a full-blown fly-by-wire aircraft. There's no actual feel. Let's see, if you're flying a 737, you actually have feel on the yoke. The Airbus family doesn't have any feel, so it has to create artificial feel. This is why I'm mentioning the dampeners. The dampeners are important to the pilots because they get a sense of the maneuverability or a feel for the stick. You know what I mean? So this is why I'm telling you this. If those dampeners weren't there, it would be literally like you're sitting at home playing a video game. They would have no feedback. And another side note, in order to change this unit right here, it is incredibly complicated. It's also an inspection item, and there's fluid and liquids that are within those dampeners. The whole unit has to be taken out and put inside of a cage, making sure that the unit itself is not tipped sideways or any other way, because fluid can potentially fall out or leak out. Anyway, let's get back to this. That connect this, because the side stick needs to have a very smooth transition. You can't just spring back. Watch. See that smooth transition? That's how it's supposed to function. Nice and smooth, back and forth. Now if it's, like, say, violently springs back and goes like that, that means one of the dampeners and the unit inside is failing, basically. And then, you gotta replace it. But anyway, yeah, nice looking side stick. One thing I like to do is stay with the aircraft and get the aircraft ready for the next crew. That means realigning the aircraft, making sure the parameters are right. Also, when the next crew comes in, I'd like to brief them on if there's any kind of active MELs, minimum equipment lists, or if anything that I put on deferral or anything that I addressed with the situation with the airplane. It just gives them a more comfortable feeling knowing that maintenance is there and everything has been addressed. It's not all the time that I get to do this because sometimes I have to get pulled away to different aircraft. Remember, I'm working multiple aircraft. Flights are coming in and flights are going out. But pilots also have the option to give us a call in case they do have some kind of a maintenance issue. So a word of advice to whoever's working on Airbus family aircraft, or in general any kind of aircraft, always look up before you touch anything. Always look at the button that you're going to touch. Don't just go by memory. Because if you're, let's say if you're doing an emergency generator test, right, and you're actually not looking up and accidentally flip this switch instead of that one, and you press that one, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get a rubber jungle. Story time, story time. Okay, what is a rubber jungle? Right there. That is called the rubber jungle on aircraft, is when you inadvertently or advertently press that button. What that button does actually is it manually releases all the masks inside of the aircraft. All of them. I mean, all of them. And what did little young Stig do when he was young and fresh and didn't know any better and did not look up before he pressed buttons? That's right. I deployed all of them on an Airbus 321. One thing about aviation, especially when you're working within aircraft maintenance, is you make mistakes. Yes, we all make mistakes. But the interesting part is you will never make that same mistake again. You only get to do it once. As soon as I pressed that button, I remember listening and I heard that little thud all across the cabin of the aircraft, and I knew exactly what I did, and I messed up. I looked down, I looked up, and then I looked back into the cabin, and I realized that I had messed up. As punishment, not only to myself and not to burden the rest of the crew, I worked the rest of that night on that very aircraft, repacking every single one of those masks. Not only did I have to repack all of that, I also have to test those masks, making sure that I repacked them correctly. Back in those days, I used to work 410s, which is 4 days, 10-hour shifts. I worked literally the pretty much majority of my 10-hour shift repacking that whole aircraft, making sure everything's okay and doing an operational check. And here's what the operational check looks like. There's a little tab that needs to be pulled out and making sure that the whole compartment doesn't fall down. And we engage the button once again, and the panel drops down, and we don't have to repack the whole mask, basically. We can just make sure that the panel is dropping down properly. And there it is. By the way, this video is courtesy of Fixed Flight Travel. You can find her on Instagram, an incredible content creator and an amazing aircraft technician.
Has occurred with the cabin pressurization system. Remain seated. Immediately pull down on the oxygen mask in front of you to start the oxygen flow. Place the mask over your nose and mouth and breathe normally. Take the elastic band and place it over your head. Pull each elastic tab to tighten the band. Even though oxygen is flowing, the plastic mask bag may not inflate. Fasten your seatbelt and don't smoke.
Every single mask in the airplane will deploy. And when I say every single one of them, all of them. All of them. Even the ones in the lavatory. Yeah. Quick little side note here, and I've talked about this before. I've talked about oxygen generators and what comes down, the masks that come down. When you pull on them, you pull a pin, because when you pull on the mask, it triggers an activation. It pulls a pin, activates a chemical reaction within a canister that creates oxygen, basically. But the ones within the lavatories are actually oxygen bottles. So they're pure oxygen. So not a chemical reaction within the lavatory systems, but a chemical reaction within the canisters that are within the cabin. So just a quick little differentiation. Now, this is also depending on the type of aircraft that you're on. 787, for example, they are all oxygen canisters. Anyway, besides that, let's keep going. Be careful what you push and pay attention to what you're doing. Another very common question always asked is, what happens if I put that landing gear lever up when the aircraft is on the ground? Nothing happens. Nothing at all. Modern day aircraft are very sophisticated, and the airplane knows its own configuration. It knows it's on the ground. Aircraft landing gear have proximity switches as well as called WOW switches, weight on wheels. If the aircraft is just sitting there static with no hydraulic systems running and nothing active, you can move that lever up and down all you want. The airplane won't do anything. There's just too much weight, especially on the main landing gear. But there is one stipulation, the nose landing gear. The nose of the aircraft is usually the most lightweight portion of the aircraft, less weight being placed onto the nose. So during maintenance procedures, if, let's say, safety devices are not installed or improperly installed and certain parameters are met, and let's say maintenance is doing some kind of a functional check, there is a chance where the nose landing gear could fail and collapse, just like this. This happened to British Airways on a 787, and maintenance was performing an operational check. During this operational check, landing gear safety devices were installed, but they were installed in an incorrect position. Here, I'm going to show you what an Airbus landing gear device looks like. It basically locks out the landing gear from actuating or moving at certain pivot points. The Boeing ones are just big pins. I think you get the idea. Anyway, long story short, what ended up happening is as they were performing the check, hydraulics got applied to the aircraft, and that nose landing gear actuator moved, allowing this to happen. The nose gear collapsed. It's unfortunate, damage occurred to the aircraft. Nobody likes to see that, but the important part is nobody was severely injured and everybody walked away. My point I'm trying to make here is that in a normal situation, when you put that gear handle up, no matter if it's an Airbus or a Boeing, nothing is going to happen. The aircraft has to be in a very peculiar or specific configuration for that nose gear to move. Otherwise, it's not going to move. So there you go. Hopefully that answers your question. Have I shown you guys the the observer seat for the Airbus 320 family? Move this forward a little bit. There you go. We also got a second one too. That's one. There's the other one. Pretty cool, huh? A lot more room than inside of a 737, that's for sure. Next office. Hey, it's a Max. It is hilarious. The 737 MAX nose gear sits so high up tall, or taller than the NG, that I don't even need to duck down. I can just walk right in. But then again, I'm 5'6". So a few weeks back, I showed a 737 getting pushed back, and a lot of you noticed something. Water coming out of the fuselage, and a lot of people asked, what is that fluid coming out? That's exactly what it was. It is water. Here it is. Take a look. You see it? It's dumping out right there. Now, there are 2 ports right there, and I'm going to show you those ports so you know exactly where it's coming from. And to make mention, any kind of potable water that is coming out from the galley sinks or lavatory sinks or any kind of door sill for drainage will go overboard. Any kind of waste that has its own tank. So don't worry, that is not any kind of waste. That is just simply gray water. And here it is. One of those ports is for the lavatory system A drain, and the other one is for the water for door sill drain. That is all. Bug went right through the bypass. This is the CFM LEAP 1B equipped on the 737 MAX. This is the high bypass, and as we look further back, we see these 2 little ports or drain masts. Their specific name is turbine case drain tubes. These tubes will drain any kind of flammable fluid from the core compartment or the core of the engine itself. And the only flammable fluid would be fuel, obviously. It's better to dump it overboard than have it build up inside and, potentially can cause an explosion or a fire. There you go. That's the high bypass of the CFM LEAP 1B. Yep. Here's the pressure. This is a pressure relief door. Let me show you what it looks like underneath. Look at that. Active case cooling control right there. These are the tubes for that. And a bunch of other core components. Yeah. But the door is there just in case there's an overpressure inside the compartment, this area. This door will automatically blow out. Cool, huh? Here's that outflow valve I was talking about earlier, right there, that opening. Lots of the design of the 737 still maintains its old structure, or the way it used to be. Nothing has changed dramatically, but there are certain things that have changed. For example, the drain mast for the APU right there, it's slightly changed. The APU intake door also changed. I didn't get a good shot of it. Also, the exhaust of the APU also changed. Remember, on the older model, there used to actually be 2 holes in there. And the most notable, the wingtips. There was a big design change on those as well. All the bigger LCDs. Almost works like a 787. Kind of a dumbed down version of it, but yeah, still the same. No touchpad. You got to do it with the little scroll wheel. Yeah, that's about it. This is a good bird. Just came in from Miami and actually going right back to Miami. So, yeah, all's good. Before we leave, can't leave without switching the guns. I love doing that. All right, let's get out of here. Actually, before I even left the aircraft, I wanted to take one more stroll through the cabin, making sure that nothing is out of place. Just taking a look at the various equipment or emergency equipment. This right here is a emergency locator transmitter, the ELT, the portable one. In case of an emergency, flight attendants can grab this unit and take it with them and activate it. It can also activate when it touches any kind of water as well. It will send out an emergency frequency on 121.5 and 243.0 megahertz. Some ELTs can actually transmit 406 megahertz as well. Aircraft usually have 2 of these. One is portable and one is fixed to the aircraft. I can't remember who asked, but somebody wanted to see emergency lighting. Here it is. This is on a 737 MAX. Emergency lighting is already an automatic function. I'm simply just turning it on manually just to show you guys. Emergency lights have their own battery packs. They are completely separate from the aircraft batteries. In case you have complete power loss and failure, those lights will come on no matter what because they have independent power source. Since we're here, let's talk about those little lights right there. That kind of looks like a little rainbow. Yeah, those things actually mean something, and those are for the flight attendants. The one on the left that looks pinkish, that's for the crew call light. The one in the center, the blue one, that's the passenger call light. One on the right, the yellow or amber one, that's the lavatory call light. This is how it's configured in a Boeing 737. Airbus has it slightly different and different configuration of lights. But flight attendants get trained for this kind of stuff. So the whole premise of this is for flight attendants to communicate with each other or understand if the passenger is communicating with them without, talking. It's a visual cue. That's about it. Anyway, let's keep going. Speaking of flight attendants, the #1 flight attendant on this flight actually knew somebody that I knew. Keep this in mind. I'm going to bring it up here in a little bit, and you'll understand how small the community is within the aviation world. It's actually fun. Hey, look at that. Look what showed up. The U.S. Airways bird. Ah, it's awesome. I haven't seen this one in a while. Very cool. I'm sure I've shown you this before a million times, but why not? One more time. Little Easter egg for you right there, if you ever see this bird. So here's the special part that I was mentioning earlier. So the captain on this flight, Captain Brandon, very good friend of mine, he was flying this airplane out. He was going to Dallas. Usually when he flies through, he'll send me a text message. Hey, Stig, come on up, say hi. I go up, I chit-chat with him. This wasn't even my airplane, but anyway, I see him there. I always like to go up there and say hi and catch up. And he asked me, what gate were you working on? And I was working on the other side of the terminal. And he said, the 737 MAX. He goes, the one going to Miami? I said, yeah, how did you know? He goes, yeah, because my wife is the #1 flight attendant. Well, how about that? What a small world. And I've been meaning to catch his takeoff all this time, and I finally got it. Not only that, I got it in the special livery. I hung out for a little moment right there. He had to wait for the 747 to take off first, and then he was next in line. Wish I had caught a better moment, but there was an Air France A350 that pulled up right in front, but I think it was a pretty good catch. Hope you liked it, Captain Brandon. Good to see you again, sir. Now, if you're wondering why that 777-200 stopped right there and did not proceed further, because there was obstruction on the sides of the wings. Pilots are instructed if they see any kind of baggage carts or anything that's, that might potentially damage the aircraft, they will stop it and they will have to request a tow-in. So the neighboring ramp agents had left some baggage carts, and basically the pilot says, no, I'm not going to taxi up, it's unsafe. So our ramp agents tow the aircraft in like this. It's a bit of a nuisance, it causes a bit of a delay, but you know what, safety first. And it kind of gives me an opportunity to inspect the wheels as they're turning. So you lose a little bit here, but you gain a little bit there. Next office, back to the wide bodies. 777, ETOPS time. A quick little walk around, make sure everything is A-okay. My partner is over there already oiling the engines. Oiling the oil. Me and my partner divvy up the work. He oiled the engines and went upstairs to do the interior. I did the exterior walk around and the cargo pit. My partner also informed me that one of the hydraulic systems was a little bit low, below the limits of the ETOPS flight, so we went downstairs and we serviced it up. All right, all the hydraulics are back to normal. Everything's good to go. This one's almost ready to fly. All right. Before I forget. All right, another beautiful day done. Hope you guys had fun. I'll see you bright and early in the morning. Later. Good morning, everybody. Let's go. Another beautiful day, another beautiful adventure. Never a dull moment on line maintenance. Started the day out with an engine run. Aircraft had been pushed back, but then came back to the gate. And this was a very interesting one too. There was nothing wrong with the engine itself. It was actually about the hydraulic systems. To be specific, the famous barking dog, the PTU. For some strange reason, when both engines were turned on, the PTU was still running, and it's not supposed to. Let me explain. The PTU's primary purpose is to provide pressure to one system or the other. To be more specific in Airbus terms, either yellow system or green system. It does not intermix fluid. Most of the time, you'll hear this unit on the ground. But you can hear it in the air in case one of the engine-driven pumps either is failing or is not producing enough pressure. So that's the initial report that we got when we got up to the flight deck and pilots said they reported the PTU was still running when they had both engines running. In order to simulate this, we had to do an engine run. After all safety precautions were taken, people on the ground, wing walkers and everything, we got the engines up and running. As the engines were running, my partner went into the back cabin and I asked him to see if he can hear the PTU still running. It wasn't. So it must have been some kind of a hiccup because everything was functioning perfectly. It happens time to time. But this is why we have our maintenance procedures. This is why we have our troubleshooting manuals. On the plus side, you get to see the engine parameters as the engine spools up and stabilizes. Let's go from top to bottom and I'll explain them. The top gauges are your EPR. This is a V2500 engine, which is heavily influenced by Rolls-Royce design, so it runs on EPR, engine pressure ratios. Takes inlet pressure as well as exhaust pressure, combines it, which gives you your thrust ratings, or power setting. That's the easier way to understand it. Right below that, you have EGT, exhaust gas temperatures. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. To the right of it, you have FF, fuel flow. Right below that, you have N1, which is the rotation speed of the low pressure spool. Right of it, you have N2, which is the rotation speed of the high pressure spool. Remember when I talked about how engines work, that you have two spools in there? On the right side, those two little green tabs, that's the flap settings. Right now, flaps are fully up. On the bottom left corner, you'll see FOB, fuel on board. The amber message you're seeing right there is saying door L, forward cabin. That means the door is open. And yes, we're allowed to run the engine with that door open. Okay, take particular attention to where it says N2 on the number 1 engine. You see there's like a little gray box around it. As soon as that gray box goes away, that means the engine is stabilized. Now let's take a look at the ECAM, the screen below. A ton of information right here as well. Okay, top to bottom. Fuel used, pretty self-explanatory. Right below that, oil quantity. PSI, pressure of the oil, oil pressure. Right below that, the temperature of the oil. Right below that, it says vibration of N1 and N2. Right below that, you're going to see the letters ING. That stands for ignition. Each engine has 2 igniters, igniter A, igniter B, or 2 systems of ignition, A and B. Every time the engine starts, it alternates. One time it'll use A, the next time it'll use B. Both of them can also be used at the same time, let's say in case of a hung start. And right below that, you're going to see numbers right there, PSI. This is the amount of pressure that is being provided to the engine from the APU. I think that pretty much covers most of it. Alrighty. Anyway, problem went away. All was good. Dispatch the airplane. I hitched a ride with one of our ramp personnel, and I just wanted to watch the airplane push out. He did an excellent job getting the airplane out, nice and straight, right on the line. The rule of thumb when pushing an airplane out is quite simple. Nice and steady, nice and slow. Minor adjustments on the wheel. It may look confusing because you have two pivot points. You have a pivot point at the tug and also the nose wheel. When pushing back, the only thing you really have to remember is the direction you turn the wheel in, that's the direction the tail is going to go. So if I turn left, the tail will go left. If I turn right, the tail will go right. And remember, this is when the tug is facing the aircraft. If it's, pulling the aircraft, it's where you turn is where the nose will go. And the most important thing to remember is you don't always have to be right center, dead center on the line. Just get it close enough. There's plenty of space. And as long as you don't hit anything, that's all that matters. That's a successful pushback. So you don't have to be always directly on the line. Once the aircraft is free of any kind of obstructions and there's no obstructions in the back, the flight deck will talk down to the driver and say, am I clear to start engines? And that's exactly what they will do. They will go in sequence and start whichever engine they want. The driver will stop at a designated location and the flight deck or the pilots will set the brakes. That's that little light that you see that came on. That indicates that the brakes are set. After that, ramp personnel will disconnect the tow bar and then remove the bypass pin and show the pilot as they're walking away. And the airplane is free to go. LAX gets so many interesting liveries and so many different airlines, and this one was one of the most interesting ones I've seen. Check this out. Cayman Airlines. It was very nice to see this one. And this was a special one too. It's the first 737-8 in the Caribbean. That's pretty awesome. talk about the nose landing gear on a 777-300. The nose strut on a 777-300 actually mimics the Airbus 320 family main landing gear. That's because it's a dual chamber strut. It has nitrogen on top and it also has nitrogen on bottom. It's still considered an oleo strut, air oil shock strut. But when we're servicing this strut, you have to service it from the top and bottom. Exactly like the A320 family main landing gear. That's why you saw that little gauge I showed you. Now on a -200, you can only service it from the top. The nitrogen is only from the top and the rest of it is oil. On the side of the nose landing gear door, there's also a quick reference chart to service the strut itself. But this is just for quick reference. We usually use our manuals.
There you go. Some little bit of G90 love for you. That is beautiful. Bigger than life.
You know, a lot of you watch the videos and you guys amaze me all the time because the keen attention to detail that you see and you point it out to me. And it gives me more things to talk about, such as these. You see these little orange markings on all these fittings? These are called torque stripes. When the landing gear and all its fittings are being assembled, an inspector or quality assurance person will come up and after it gets torqued, they will put a little torque stripe. This also serves as a visual cue for us as line maintenance. Let's say if that fitting has migrated and a torque stripe has broken, that means that fitting has come loose. Now, over time, these torque stripes do deteriorate and kind of fall off and chip away, but there's still some remnants left in there, so we know what to look for if in case that fitting did migrate or come loose. In any case, that's why you see those things all over the fittings like that.
You know what that is? That's an exhaust for the nose cowling anti-ice. Which I probably told you before, but yeah. Keeps all this area nice and hot to prevent ice buildup on the lip of the intake cowling.
And look what have it, the 777 that came in with a slight little hiccup with the starter valve. It presented a fault, and basically we had to run the engine. Well, no, not fully run the engine. We actually had to perform a dry run. Dry run means no ignition, no fuel. We'll simply apply air pressure to the starter and allow the engine to spin up. What we are looking for is that starter valve to open and close. This is why you see the engine not fully starting or not spooling up. It's just simply getting to a point where we want to see the starter valve open and close, which is right down there.
Full pressure good.
Good. Fuel flow 0, obviously. Oil pressure good. It's probably going to cool the engine down. EGT's probably going to go down. Watch.
Yeah. Yep, it's going down. Yeah. 67.
Even N1's getting some action. I know, guys, not very exciting. Just as exciting as watching grass grow. But yeah, that's the simple operational check we needed to perform. Fault cleared, always good to go. There you go. Valve closed.
Now we get to take it around the pattern once, right?
Yeah. Let's go flying.
and just watch it spool down. That's it. Let them know. Let the ground know. We're good. That's all we needed.
Flight deck ground, we're done. Copy that.
There you go. Another happy customer. Fault is cleared. Good to go. Oh, and the fault was a starter valve fault. That's why we had to dry run or dry motor the engine. There you go. All right, on to the next one.
I had to head down to the hangar to pick up some screen cleaner or the monitor cleaners, and this is what we use to clean up the monitors inside the flight deck. On the way back though, I got a nice little treat from a beautiful A380. Good old flying building taxiing by. This thing is so enormous, it's insane.
Here we go. Last flight of the night. Man, this was a nice long weekend. Let's see. Print out a nice little post-flight report. Check the status. This one just came in and it's going right back out to, I think came in from Charlotte, going back out to Tampa. But all is good. Engine oils are good. Let's see, hydraulics are good. All is well. And let's see what the post-flight says. Why not? Let's do some Christmas trees before we go. Always love doing that. And let's see. Look at that. What a nice ending to a nice day. No warnings, no messages, and that's exactly what I like to see. Hope you guys all had fun. I'll see you guys on the next adventure. Later.
That wraps it up, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Once again, thank you so much, everybody, for watching and being patient and asking questions, most of all. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll leave you with this beautiful 787 pulling in. It was one of the earlier birds I forgot to include into the video, but there you go, guys. Enjoy. Take care, everybody. I will see you all on the next adventure. Later.